Thank you for that talk, and only being a woman that I've heard of so much growing up and just not really knowing really much about you, I appreciate you and I appreciate what you've done. The first thing I just want to say is a comment. I live about an hour from Atlanta, and I work in Cumming, which is about 30 minutes from Atlanta. And it's been made aware to me in the last year that it is the #1 place for trafficking, and one of the #1 places of trafficking, sex trafficking in the United States. And after listening to everybody here and just feeling more empowered, I'm going to get me and my $2 more involved. And if that, ends in something tragic or whatever, hopefully not. But, at least I will feel like I've done something. Mm-hmm. So I feel good to have, educated myself as far as some of that is concerned. But the second thing is, what do you recommend? I don't really know your personal history, but I am a mother, a physician. This is my second marriage. I have 2 girls, a 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. I did not change my name, my last name, which was a point of contention forever and probably still is. What do you recommend when times get tough and you're trying to talk to your girls about the inequality of things and even the inequality of how things run at the house, even though you're the person who's really the wage earner, the money maker? How do you kind of make everything make sense?
I just want to say, because you're living near Atlanta, that there's a Georgia organization called A Future Not a Past, which is really very important. Rita Mae Anderson, and so you might look into that group, because they have managed to get young women help without arresting them first. Because if you're arrested first, the pimp tells you that your only choice is one jail or another, and he's quite accurate. So Georgia, because of this organization, has changed its laws. I'm not. I don't think there's a magic thing to say to kids, except to use what's happening to teach. Okay, there's inequality in the home, then say there's inequality and say, this is where we are now, but you'll be able to make more changes. If there's commercialization and bad stuff on television, it doesn't work, I don't think, to tell people totally not to watch it or never to have a Barbie doll, but you can point out that the Barbie doll wouldn't be able to stand up even, if it was a real person. You can use reality to teach with. I would say, from listening to the young women, because I'm on campuses a lot, and I've worked with many young women, it probably was not a good thing to say to them, you can be anything you want to be, because it's not true. And you can't lie to kids. But you can say you should be able to be anything you want to be, and you're going to have such a good time making that come true, making that more true. Because I noticed that some of them who were consistently told this by well-meaning parents now think it's their fault if they can't, realize, right.
Hi, Gloria. Nice to meet you. Just a little while back, when I first remember hearing about all the work you and Betty and all the other women were doing, seemed just a little while back, and it was a promise of equality and access that when I went to medical school, I thought would be realized by the time I was coming to the latter part of my career. And unfortunately, it hasn't been. And as co-chair of the Gender Equity Task Force for AMWA, one of the biggest challenges that we face as the task force, and I would like your advice about this, I know the whole task force would like your advice about this, is letting the young women know that there is so much still left to do, and I say that with such regret, because we had hoped that there wouldn't be, that there would not be a need for such a task force. So how would you campaign them? You're in media, you have this wonderful magazine. How would you campaign to these younger women who are not going to believe that they've got to get involved? They have to stop the fact that we make, as professionals, the biggest wage gap. 62 cents on the dollar is what doctors get paid, women doctors, for all the professions according to the US Census Bureau. So if you can give us some advice, because today we decided that next year's project is to campaign our younger members, our student members, so that they would realize and become involved in this work.
Mm. Well, I suspect that the most important thing is listening, So really this question, I would like to ask some of the students here, what made you get involved, because you're here, and what do you think would, cause others to be involved? I mean, usually, it's not like we're trying to manufacture problems, so usually... So usually there's been something inequity that has been experienced, and at a minimum that the dominant culture of the profession hasn't changed to suit women. Women are supposed to change to suit it.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So you need to come together in groups. I mean, the source of every revolution in the world is people talking to each other, telling your stories, saying an unsayable thing. 12 other people say, that happened to you? I thought that only happened to me. Maybe it's not my individual fault after all. If it's political, we can get together and change it, so on. But I think, who knows this the best are the students who are here now. And there's nothing more important that we can do than listen. And I do think that speaking for my own generation, too often probably, this isn't true for me because I got lots of reward, but I think most women worked their hearts out and didn't get any reward. So now they're trying to get reward from their daughters, and you can't do that. It's not the daughter's fault, and gratitude never radicalized anybody. I didn't walk around saying thank you for the vote, We get mad because of what happened to us. Right? So I think the main thing we can do is support each other in raising our standards. So we can question why it is, say, at the most basic level, that young women are still saying, how can I combine career and family, when young men are not saying that. It's a question you can't answer if only women are asking it. But women still think sometimes that only we have to do this, when in fact there was not a star in the east. Actually, there's, and many men want to be close to their children too. So we have to transform the way we work and raise our standards.
Yes, that's our other small project, to change the whole paradigm of the way medicine is practiced, so that it's practiced from a female point of view and not a male point of view exclusively.
Right. I know, I must say that because I don't have children, right? So one day I realized that for centuries, women had been made, came from watching women have children on other continents, against gravity. I said, no wonder you're mad. Other people had been sitting, squatting, having some, right? So I asked a OBGYN about it, and he said, we need them at eye level. He said, it would be terrible if... Right.
This relates to actually the previous question. And it's an encouragement to students and to residents as you look for your next positions of employment, is to ask the important questions. A number of years ago, the important questions were, what is the policy in place regarding maternity or paternity leave? And currently, the question may be, what has your institution done to look at salary equity with regard to gender and with regard to race? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a critically important question, because academic institutions are now looking at this, and the results vary depending on what institution you're talking about. And I can say that because I've been at a number of different institutions, and the results of those studies have varied. I'm very proud to say that at the institution that I'm currently at, the University of Massachusetts Medical School, that a very significant and in-depth study was done of salary equity with regard to gender and race, and there were no systemic discrepancies found amongst the salaries of the faculty, the employed faculty, with regard to gender or race. But that's not the case at all institutions. And so it's important to ask those questions, because raising those questions also motivates the institutions to look at that data.
Mm-hmm. And put it on the web. I mean, that's a proud statistic, and that should allow them to recruit in a way that other institutions can't, and perhaps that will motivate the not-so-good ones to get better.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm neglecting the mic in the back. I'm sorry.
I think that those are helpful comments, and what I want to say too, which is that feminism is what brought me to medicine. So we do know, the young women in the room do know, at least to some extent, what women before us have done and how important it is and what the state today is like, and that we want to be active in that and recruit other women to participate and kind of bring that forward and work for gender parity. So that is present. So I hope that that brings some comfort. I want your name. And my name's Elisa. I'm at University of North Carolina. North Carolina is also a difficult place currently. Sorry? We'll be in touch. Oh, okay. But I just wanted to say that being here at AMWA has been a really comforting place for me, because it's been hard to find any sort of intersection of feminism and medicine elsewhere. And I feel like this conference has done an excellent job kind of bringing in some of those ideologies and perspectives that I have personally, and being able to bring those into medicine for me. So I wanted to say that to everyone in the room and to the organizers and to Gloria Steinem, that this feels like a place that the interests that brought me to medicine kind of collide.
Great. Thank you.
Ms. Steinem, I'm very curious about the personal aspect of how you got started doing what you're doing. Were there times at the beginning when you wondered about what you did? Were there times when it was frustrating? Were there times, like for many of us, when we've been arguing and yelling and discussing things, that we just went home and cried? I mean, how was it that you found the strength to keep going? Because I know you faced a lot of adversity, and I know you faced a lot of derogatory statements. How did you keep going?
Well, the question I ask myself actually usually is, how come I didn't figure this out earlier? You know, because I was like in my mid-30s before I realized that just working hard and being a good girl wouldn't do it, you know? Because there was no movement in those years, and it wasn't until, you know, other women spoke up that I began to say, oh yeah, that's why. So the answer is having a group of people you meet with at least once a month or maybe once a week who make you feel smart, not dumb. That's how you know, what part of the way you know you're in the right group. That shares experiences, that, you know, so that you can create a kind of alternate family. Because we are communal creatures, we are. And I don't think we can do it by ourselves. And I was always lucky because I had a group at the magazine, and because I go around and speak and I do all these things, and because nobody can fire me, as I was saying. You know, it's very important for any social justice movement to have a small percentage of people who can't be fired. This is really crucial. Or maybe you can be fired from one thing, but you still have something else. But what has kept me going always are people, mostly women, some men, with shared values, who I could talk to and say, did I really mess up here, or am I just trying to be in control? You know, you don't agree with me? Let me explain it to you again, you know. Or or am I wasting my time because these folks are totally hopeless? Or, you know, just, you know, some place you can go for sanity and support and shared values. And with that, not only will you continue, but you will have a good time, because you will have this kind of companionship and community and dancing and poetry. You know, Emma Goldman was right. You know, the means are the ends, you know, so if you want to have, and this is key to being here for the long haul, which all of you, you know, are going to have to be, I think. if we want music and dancing and poetry and sex and joy at the end, we have to have some music and joy and poetry and sex along the way. Otherwise, we won't get there.
My name is Afton. I'm a first-year med student, and I'm from a small town in southern West Virginia. Mine is more of a statement of gratitude to you and to all the other wonderful women in this room. Being from such a small town, I experienced gender bias from day one of applying to med school. I would tell people in my hometown I was going to med school, and they'd, oh, so you're going to be a nurse. Just assumed. But this has kind of reassured me that I am where I'm supposed to be. You know, we have probably less than a third of our class are women in my medical school. And I was even, a couple weeks ago in anatomy lab, we have a male professor, and he asked me the name of an artery. I got it right. And he looked at me and said, oh, so you are more than just a pretty face.
It's irresistible to say, sorry, I can't say the same for you.
And I wish I had thought of that at the time. Noted. I will keep that one for later. But just most importantly, I just want to thank all of you, and you especially, Gloria, for being here and for just reaffirming my belief in gender equality and that we can do it no matter where we live, no matter where we're from, foreign country, small town. It's universal, and I can't wait to get back to school and advocate things that I've learned here and throw that in the professor's face the next time he tries to make a sexist comment. Thank you.
And that's great. And just make sure, you know, you have a, you know, it doesn't matter. We used to call them consciousness-raising groups, remember that? And then we called them rap groups, and then we called them networking groups, and then now they call them book clubs. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter what you call it, but that you have a group of people. And I must say, the other end of your comment about nurses is that men are being discriminated against when they want to be nurses. Think of all the guys who come home from Iraq and Afghanistan trained as medics, and you know want to become nurses and are made to feel that it's a female profession. And there are community colleges, mainly, as far as I can see from traveling, who are helping them to convert. But we need to make sure that they're welcome. And it will get nurses better paid, too, to have men. Yeah.
Ms. Steinem, thank you so much for coming. And I am starting residency next year. I'm very excited. But I have the luxury of, I went to school and I'll be doing my residency in Los Angeles, so maybe things are a little bit more insidious. But I'm wondering what you would say to those of us as we're entering residency or looking toward residency. Since medicine is so hierarchical, how do we stay vigilant for sexism that is insidious, that is internalized as we go through our training, especially when we're not necessarily in a position of power?
Mm-hmm. Well, you trust your instincts, you know, and treat others equally. I mean, I have a friend who's a lawyer who got actually fired from a big New York law firm because she refused to call her secretary only by her first name, and said, no, if we're all first and last names, we're all to be, you know, I mean, so this hierarchy can be very insidious at very different levels. But you've got an instinct for it. And if you question, consult the 9-year-old girl inside. You know, before the gender role came down upon us, like an Iron Maiden kind of, you know, right? And we were climbing trees and saying, I know what I want, I know what I think, and then suddenly we were supposed to be feminine and saying, how clever of you to know what time it is, and so on. But But that little 9-year-old girl is still in there who says it's not fair. You are not the boss of me, right? Kids say that, right? So consult her. We're all like Russian dolls. We have all these selves inside. And say to the person who's being unfair what you would want someone to say to you if you were being unfair. You wouldn't want them just to dislike you and not say anything, but you would want it to said in an empathetic way, right? So start with an empathetic way, and then you can escalate if it doesn't work, but start with, you know, what if in the same situation would help you.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming in and speaking with us. And my question is sort of related to the earlier comment about younger women in medicine maybe not being aware of how much work there is still to do. And I suppose I would challenge that in a way to say that I think in general that we understand that there is work to do, but it's more of a question of where to start. Especially because just over the past year and the little amount of free time that we've had to pay attention to the news, there's been this horrific political backslide to be watching, and I feel like my jaw's been dropped all the time and can't believe the things that are being brought back to the table that maybe we thought had been accomplished and finished with. So I guess my question is more of what would you recommend in not just, you know, sitting back with our jaws gaping and like the poignant picture that was going around with a woman who was, I think in her 50s, holding a sign saying, "I can't believe I still have to protest this." So I guess my question is sort of what is your perspective on how do we approach something that's come back to a place where we thought we had left?
Well, first of all, we never left it. I mean, you know, because, you know, 85% of the counties have no abortion services, and, you know, young women and poor women, you know, we know all of that. So mostly the problem was that the backlash, first when you start a social justice movement or any big change, people say you can't do that, it's against Freud, God, somebody, you know, you can't do, and then we do it anyway, and then they say, well, you know, it used to be necessary, but it's not anymore. So it is this post-racist, post-feminist, all this ridiculous stuff has been the media, but not reality. And that's why we need to talk to each other, you know, so we have a reality check. Secondly, we are told that change starts at the top. This is a lie. A tree does not grow from the top, a house is not built from the top, and social change is not built from the top. So that's a way of disempowering us. I remember when Nixon invented the tactic of telling people that politics is dirty, your vote doesn't matter, in order to suppress the voter turnout. And we've bought that too. So, you know, and in fact, the voting place is the only place where a poor person can equal a rich, you know. I mean, in India, where I just came from, they vote a huge degree more than we do. And the poor vote more than the rich, and we're the other way around, because we've fallen for this idea that what we do at the bottom doesn't matter. Everything we do matters. So do whatever comes to hand and get at least a few other people to do it with you. You know, we have access to all this information now. I mean, there's a danger of cocooning on the internet, I think, you know, and only listening to people you agree with, and also hitting send and thinking you've done something, you know, in the real world, which you haven't. But the answer is do whatever you can.
First of all, I wanted to say I'm exceedingly grateful to all the women in this room who've come before us. My mother is a PhD chemist and has, of course, talked about the challenges that that's been for her. So what I really wanted to ask was, you know, in school, sometimes they'll identify women who are successful, and they'll come give us talks about their success. But when you actually listen to them, you realize that their message is, you can't have it all. You can't be successful and be a mother and be happy and be a wife and everything you want to be. Their message is, you have to only be the professional. You can't have the wife and the mother and the everything else. What do you do in that situation? How do you
Mm-hmm.
address that and say, no, you're wrong? To this woman who's 20,
No, but
30 years
she's-
older and successful.
She's probably right for herself. I mean, she probably had to follow a culturally masculine pattern in her own experience, but you are younger and you can push it a little bit more. But we need to change the structure inch by inch by inch. We need to understand, as Sheryl Sandberg, the woman at Facebook who's been much in the news, she says that she tells women that the single most important career and business decision they will make if they want to have children is who their partner is. And that they have a right and a duty almost to say up front, this is going to be an equal thing here. I want my child to know that both women and men can be loving and nurturing, and whatever career sacrifices may still have to be made because the structure hasn't changed, we're both going to make. So, it's the art of doing it is changing as much as you can, as pushing it as far as you can. And that woman who's speaking to you probably is just making the mistake of, and she had to do what she had to do, but she's assuming that other people have to do the same thing, which is not necessarily true.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Gloria. Again, I want to say thank you so much for coming tonight and speaking to us, and I know everyone here is going to remember your speech and seeing you tonight, and also thank you for laying so much of the groundwork of feminism in this country. You've truly impacted every person in this room and of future generations. I'm a first-year medical student, and in my undergraduate studies, I focused on gender studies quite extensively, and I thank you in your speech for mentioning that the smallest things, the smallest actions of our own truly make an impact. And I guess I take that to heart because I believe that even the smallest, shortest conversation with someone about feminism or about gender equity might truly make a difference and make them think about something they'd never thought of before. And I am also glad that you mentioned the impact of men in feminism, since our society does grant them more clout and privilege and power. They are such an integral part of the feminist movement, and I was wondering if you could offer any insight from your experiences about talking to men who often feel so marginalized by feminism and threatened by it, how to recruit them as allies and truly make them understand what truly needs to be done.
I don't know. I feel like I should ask the men here too. Because I'm not trying to speak for you. I think it's mainly about empathy. It's asking each of us, asking men to think deeply. Okay, suppose I was exactly the same person with the same ambition and humor and faults and everything, and was born female. What would my life have been like, and what would I want? And I have to answer the same question. Suppose I had been born male, would I accept this unearned privilege, and how would I get out of it? And I think the answer is that we both have the reward of developing all our human qualities. So, and I confess, by any means necessary. That's why we did at the magazine all this research we took out of the deaths, causes of male deaths, everything that could reasonably be attributed to the masculine role. Deaths from violence, guns, speeding, tension, all of that. And we figured out that we had 4 more years of life to offer men, and we thought this was not a bad offer. And closeness to their children, and perhaps doing what they were told they couldn't do because men didn't do that. And not being aggressive, not being, taking whatever it is. I just think we each need to see our own enlightened self-interest and wholeness in it, and then we can advance together. And we need to tell the truth to each other. We need to pay men the honor of telling the truth, and not just feeling bad and resenting it and feeling we can't say it. That doesn't help with us, right?
Well, I wanted to, first of all, I think many of the questions I have already been addressed. How do we bring our young people along, and the abortion whole diversion in the thing. So I have a couple comments and a couple thank yous. One, I'm Norma Jo Waxman. I'm a family physician and a family planning provider, reproductive health expert. I provide abortions and teach contraception and abortion training and do a lot of advocacy and policy work, and it's been so horrified and what's going on currently. But I want to tell the young woman who was before here about, I'm a single mom, I have 2 young girls, I'm a professor in family medicine at UCSF. You can do it, okay? I'm not saying it wasn't hard, and when I was in AMWA in the early 80s and looking at the women before, many who didn't have families and the women who did, and being so inspired and learning, you're in a group here. If you stay with AMWA, we will continue to be supported and mentored. So I want to thank all of the students who are here. It's been sort of reviving to me and inspiring about you. And Gloria, I can't say what an honor it is to get to listen to you in person. And I'm a child of the 60s. Well, thank you. But I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s. And, I know, Jemu, I was at your thing, the, Women's Media Center, and, just followed all along. And it's so interesting, too, to hear both Dr. Remen and you be such inspiring storytellers. And really speak not just to women and feminism, but to speak to humanism and about how we can't heal ourselves as women until we heal the humans. And I think, bringing the issue of child trafficking, sex trafficking to AMWA is an important one. And thank you, Gayatri. I think we'll support you in that. But thank you.
No, thank you. And it is about choices, not this time, but the last time I was in India, I was sitting in Mumbai in a women's center in a poor neighborhood, and they're like, 50 women were all sitting on the floor, and it's a and I got the question, aren't you sorry you don't have children, right? And I thought, if I tell the truth, I'll lose these women because look at the culture. And then I thought, well, but what's the point in not telling the truth? So I said the truth, which is not for a millisecond have I been. and they applauded because they're forced to have children, and through child marriage sometimes, all kinds of. So just say it. Just say it, because even if it doesn't work, you are preserved from the very worst thing, which is walking around for 3 days saying, what if? What if I told the truth? Oh, sorry, yeah.
Hi, good evening, Ms. Steinem and everyone. I just want to say first, it's really just marvelous being here. I'm kind of shocked by how radiant and awesome everyone is. Ooh. But besides that, I guess we've been here and I've heard people talk about thinking outside of the box and about technology. This morning we had breakfast with a woman who does robotic surgery, which I thought was amazing. But so I guess it's kind of a thought and a question. We've talked a lot about gender equality, and it almost sounds like we're talking about only 2 genders. So I'm just curious, I don't know, kind of especially with the advent of these new, just incredible, bizarre science fiction type technologies that are coming out, how do we feel about a world where there's more than 2 genders? It seems like there was a time once, older cultures, even in India still, that eunuch is an acceptable option for a gender and a passport. So, why is it that we have this societal need to just constantly reconstruct 2 genders? If you go online, somebody asks age, sex, location. So, I guess I'm just wondering, in the sort of spirit of cyclicalness, are we moving towards a future that is more like the past, where we have 2, 3, 5 genders, where gender is a spectrum?
I think we are. I mean, pretty soon we're going to have forms that says sex, and you say yes or no. Because it all goes together. I mean, the reason we have The reason we have two genders is because we're hooked on reproducing soldiers and workers and keeping races pure and all this bullshit, So, in fact, gender doesn't exist, just like race doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I mean, there's unique individuals who are combinations of heredity and environment combined in a way that could never have happened before and could never happen again. And that person, the seed of that person is in the baby. Everybody who's ever met a baby knows there's a person in that baby, right? And we have shared humanity. It's not either or, it's and. It's not nature versus nurture, it's nature and nurture. And gender completely changes from one culture to the next. And the original cultures had certainly more than, what were called berdache, but that actually is still a French word in the Native American and maybe also Native Canadian, I'm not sure. It was somebody who was born apparently one gender and chose to or sex and chose to live as, and that was okay. Not only was it okay, but they had special roles because it was thought that some roles needed the overall wisdom of both genders. So naming, for instance, was a particular role, and other ceremonial roles. And these things go together. I mean, on campuses, people say to me, so how come the same ultra-right-wing groups are against contraception and lesbians? Is that not, an odd contradiction? And I always say, no, actually, when you think about it, it's completely consistent because they're against any sexual expression that can't end in conception. So, for which sex between two people of the same sex who can't procreate stands. But human beings, you're the scientist here, I think human beings, I always worry that I'm going to discriminate against other animals here, but I think human beings are the only animals who experience the same sexual pleasure, whether we can procreate or not. Other animals mostly have times of heat or estrus when it's focused. We don't. We experience the same orgasms whether we can procreate or not. So for us, it's like what? Our cerebral cortex, our ability to reason, remember something. It's a mark of our humanity that we can, that sexuality is not only to procreate if we choose, but it's a way we communicate. It's a way we bond and reach out to each other and express love and caring and communication. And it's ever been thus. And it's just, to some extent, it's the purpose of religion. In a way, setting spirituality aside, which is very democratic, but religion is politics you can't criticize. When God looks like the ruling class, you know you're in deep shit. So, and that's what monotheism did to us, and that didn't exist before. It's wonderful to come out against monotheism, don't you think?
Thank you so much, Gloria. I just want to say thank you. This has been a really inspiring and very empowering weekend to you and everyone in this room. I would just like to say that I was kind of drawn to AMWA, and I've been questioned time and time again, and I think we touched on this earlier on tonight even. Why is AMWA still relevant? People will say to me, our class is 50-50, 50% women, 50% men. And I know that everyone in this room knows that it goes much deeper than that. But I think we've talked about this. We've talked about our allies and how to empower our allies and the people that believe in us. But what about the people that staunchly disagree with us? What do? Do we ignore them? Do we sidestep them and just kind of revolt? Or do we try to bring them to our side, and how?
Well, all of the above, probably, because it's your judgment of what's possible. I know, speaking for myself, my problem, as I'm still an old-fashioned person, is if you put me in a room and there are 100 people over here, they're ready to go, and there are 20 over here who are mad and saying, don't do it, I'll try to convince the 20. And this is not necessarily a good idea. You might just go forward with the 100. On the other hand, you don't want to abandon people. You don't want to, so try to reach out. So, there are no rules, I don't think, but do not feel that you're ever going to get unanimity. And the important thing is to move forward, because other people will be attracted to what moves and makes progress.
Thank you so much.
I think we should just, nobody else get up to a mic or the mic, okay? But we'll finish anybody who's standing. How's that? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to thank you, Ms. Steinem. Being in the same room with you and hearing you speak is really a dream come true, perhaps all the way back from my days at Columbia University, where I really learned about feminism, or even prior to that when I left Miami, Florida, where I was expected to marry and have kids when I graduated high school, not all that long ago, to pursue a career wherever it may take me. But I also wanted to thank you because your being here has actually brought me back to AMWA, that and the fact that it's in Miami. The last time I attended an AMWA, because I live here, not because of the wonderful city, but the last time I attended an AMWA meeting was in San Francisco as a medical student, when myself and a few of my friends were really so revolted by our experiences in medical school that we sort of, sought some kind of, as you say, sort of a group to be able to express what we were feeling, advance our thoughts and ideas. And, we've talked about the insidious nature of gender inequality in medicine and our professions. And I actually want to challenge that, because I do think that some things are more subtle now, but I think we also need to do a better job of sharing our stories. I graduated from medical school in 2000. I decided not to go into surgery after spending multiple hours in surgeries listening to sexist jokes, and decided there's no way I could do this for the rest of my life. When I took my most recent position, I had my boss call my husband when I was trying to negotiate my salary and say, because he knew him, "What is it you can't provide for your family?" These things are not subtle. They're not insidious.
No, that's not subtle. Right?
And it's the reality in which we live. And I think as a group, in addition to championing our causes, we need to do a better job of telling the stories. I went to medical school in the heart of the women's movement, right? Not too many miles away from Seneca Falls. I read about Elizabeth Blackwell. I went to learned all about suffragist movement, et cetera. And then here I was in this classroom, not too far from there, listening to a professor say that the reason that we have such problems with HPV and cervical cancer is because of women of low socioeconomic standing. So all of these things happen, and probably still happen, on a daily basis in our medical schools and our residencies. And I think we need to come together, share the stories, and so that becomes a powerful platform from which we move forward. Not to commiserate per se, but to put this as the actionable things that are happening now, that something needs to be done about. And one last thing I just wanted to say, because a few people have said they don't know about Ms. Steinem's sort of personal history, and I know obviously a lot of people are familiar, but HBO recently did a documentary that I encourage you all to watch if you haven't, called Gloria in Her Own Words, and as well as reading the books of her and other feminists, to use it for inspiration in the difficult times, because I think it quite adequately shares all the challenges that you had.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, when those sentences were said, "Can't you support your family?" and so on, did you feel able to tell anyone else, tell the person who said it, take them aside privately? And
I continued my negotiations, but I think we were.
But could you name to the person who said it what the problem was? I'm not criticizing if you couldn't, but I'm just saying that that's an option, because if I did some stupid thing, I would want somebody to tell me, not just hate me,
Well, right, but this is in the context of knowing that this person has gotten away with so much because of the power that they hold within this institution.
Yes, but that's why they've gotten away. Okay, well then, there's always the Strauss-Kahn rule, if one woman tells the truth, a lot of other women will too, and he'll never be president of France, okay? So... You may lose in court, but you'll win in the court of public opinion. So if you find other people who have to whom the same thing has happened, it's healing. First of all, it makes change in the external world. Secondly, the final stage of healing is using anything that happened to you that was negative to help other people. And that makes it useful. Otherwise, it feels like a waste, right? So whether it's that you were abused as a child or whether it's that you were abused by this guy, verbally, try to say it and find other people who share that experience. And at least it will help you, and it might help him.
Well, he's retiring.
He will sing Amazing Grace.
Thank you so much again.
I'm actually her sister, and we didn't do this by design. It's amazing we both got up. You've also been an inspiration to me. She's the doctor, I'm the lawyer. And I didn't want to take the time from here, but I'll be brief in my question because I really have been inspired by all the women in this room and by you. I think those of us in the legal profession have the same challenge. Our generation wants to do both. We want to be in the profession and we want to be able to have children. And the structure really makes it very difficult for women to do both. And I've been listening, and I've really, at this stage, I've really been seeking what can we do, because I see a world where women should be able to do both.
Of course.
And
of course.
in a way that really serves us. And I really feel like we are fitting ourselves into very much a patriarchal structure that doesn't work for the way our lives really work, because we just do more as working mothers. It's been my experience. So my question for you is, and I've already gotten a glimpse of it, which is it's the structure, and it's not just a woman issue, but make it a societal or a human issue. But I didn't want to leave here and squander this opportunity to get your insight. How do we make sure that this generation, not just of the medical students, but the law students and every other student, have the ability to do both, so we don't have to make the sacrifice that the other generation that came before us had to make, which was we had to not have children, make other choices to be able to be in the profession?
Well, we need a world that fits people, not a world that forms people into separate functions. I mean, the work world is organized for a guy who doesn't give a damn about his children and only is a paycheck to them. This is not good for the guy either, and it's certainly not good for the children. So we have to do whatever we can at every stage, freeze our eggs, as Gayatri says. That's what. Refuse, to marry or partner with a person who is not an equal parent. Get the best people in your class to say we're not going to work for that law firm unless you have a parental policy, a family policy that allows people to be whole human beings as well as lawyers. We're not just interested in law, we're interested in justice, thank you very much. And we don't want to work any place that is not interested in justice. Push it, push it. It is not our problem. Having children is a socially useful thing to do. And it is society's problem. They have to make it possible. And the places where it is most possible are the places where men are parents too, and there are family leave. The Scandinavian countries. I mean, South Korea is now struggling with this same problem. The birth rate has so plummeted from not changing the work pattern that they're having to import other people. I mean, women have said, okay, if this is the work pattern, I'm not having children, thank you very much. And they're terrified. So they're going to have to change. So, it is not our problem. It is the transformation of society that we deserve, that kids deserve, that men deserve. It is not our problem.
Thank you. Thank you for making a difference for all of us.
Gayatri says one more, right? Okay.
I'm going to steal it because I have to tell you, Miss Steinem.
You have to say Gloria, you can't say
Gloria. Okay. I'm going to mention 3 points in my tribute to you and all of the people who worked with you in changing what we as women think of ourselves. So my first part is I went off to college and I was told, don't be too smart, the boys won't like you. 12 years after college, I changed careers and went into medicine. I told this story at the awards luncheon, but it's a very true story. I was very active in the American Medical Women's Association the minute I hit campus because of my exposure to the women's movement. And one of my male colleagues came up to me and said, AMWA, that's a radical feminine lesbian organization. And because I had been so empowered by you and everyone who you associate with, I looked at him and said, so? And the third point I'm going to make is I am that robotic surgeon that the medical student mentioned before.
That's
Thank
great.
you for all you have done.
Thank you. All right. Feminism is a dirty word, right, because like liberal, like all kinds of words, the ultra-right wing has demonized these words, so we will feel self-conscious about using them. Rush Limbaugh says feminazi every day. I mean, I've been a feminazi to Rush Limbaugh for decades, you know. And the only thing worse would be if he liked me, you know. But, and I don't mean that everybody has to use the same word. There are great other words. There's feminista or womanista. There's girl with 3 R's or 2 R's. I love that. There's womanist. There's women's liberationist. You know, we all get to choose our word, but unfortunately we still need a word because that isn't the way the world runs. But it has been profoundly demonized. It's been, part of it is guilt. Part of it is men thinking we're going to do to them what they've done to us, which isn't true. Part of it is making it seem, you know, when I first started to speak, we always spoke in pairs, you know, me, a white woman, a woman of color, you know, and so people were especially convinced in the audience that we must be lesbians. What else were we doing together? And some guy would always get up and say, "Are you lesbians?" And my friend Flo Kennedy would say, "Are you my alternative?" And he would just sit right. So, you know, treat it with humor. But think about the triumph of the fact that as many, and in some polls, more women in the United States self-identify as feminists than as Republicans. You know, and if you give the definition of the word, the dictionary definition, more than 60% of women do. And if they had the wit to ask men, which they don't in the public opinion polls, a lot of men would too. So in spite of all this demonization, it's a great word, and it helps you, if you get it out there, it will attract people who share your values and share your community, and there are T-shirts that say this is what a feminist looks like, and, you know, I mean, so one day we won't need a word, I agree, but right now we still do. And even though it has been consciously demonized for 20 years that I know of, it's, you know, there it is. I mean, it's out there. And just now in India, I was reading two of the most popular, prestigious magazines, and they just use it routinely. There was a male poet who was described, a very admired male poet who's described as being a feminist. There were women who, you know, it's entered the language, and use it with pride. Yeah. Well, what I was about to say before is this not, I'll say it anyway, even though I know I shouldn't. Anyway, a fan-fucking-tastic room? Is this not?